Alexa, who is Bill Ramey?
Bill Jett Ramey is the founder and editor-in-chief of the popular Batman website, Batman on Film.
Good, Alexa. Very good.
Holy Halloween!
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
This town needs an enema.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
When Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die.
Gotham, this is your liberation.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
20 years in Gotham. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? He has the power to wipe out the entire human race.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. In the dark night.
I'm Batman.
Let the games begin.
Welcome to the Batman on Film podcast. Here are your hosts, Bill Jett Ramey and Rick Shue.
Hey now, thanks for tuning in to Volume 2, Episode 57 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor and proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. If you would like to advertise on the Batman on Film podcast, go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film podcast. And as always, Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive, the original. I am your host, as well as the founder of Batman on Film, Bill Jett Ramey, and I am joined, as you know, by my co-host Rick Shue, as well as the great BOF roundtablers Justin Kowalski and Ryan Haas. Justin, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to talk today.
All right, very good. Ryan, how are things for you?
I'm not so good, Bill. I was looking forward to doing our Catwoman episode today, but all this other stuff happened, so obviously that can't be this week. So I'm just a little bit let down.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy week. It was interesting to say the least. All right, Rick, you want to do some co-host duties and kind of set up what we're going to talk about first and so forth. All right, Rick. So it's not coming out of my mouth, right? I wrote, and I got a bunch of flack from, well, not from everybody, but you know, that particular group of fanboys. I wrote an article about the Batman this week. So go ahead. What was the article about? I mean, what was the main point of it was what?
The essence of it was this, is that the Batman is being pushed back. Okay? Therefore, we all had our educational speculation caps on.
Yes.
And thinking why that might be. Mm-hmm. And what I have said now for months, and anybody can go back and fact check this, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn because I ultimately still may not be right, and I hope I'm not. Mm-hmm. However, I have speculated that Affleck may very well not end up directing this or even doing it if these films continue to go south, right?
And you said that for months.
I have, and my fear has been this, is that he's doing Justice League, which personally, just off that little sizzle reel that I've seen, I'm not optimistic about it. Again, I hope I'm wrong. And I said, this guy is an artist, and I'm afraid he might jump ship if he thinks that this universe that has been created is toxic. And he just may have to write it off and say, well, look, they're not going to reboot Batman and a new Batman and have me in it. That would be confusing, and I don't want anything to do with this toxic universe. So that's speculation, 100% on my part. Now, with that said, all these little things that keep happening, he keeps the film's getting pushed back, and we're not. I just don't feel the vibe is positive, and I'm afraid that he could not end up directing this, and ultimately may not do it. And that's what we're speculating about, and you know, people kind of lost their minds over.
Yeah, and to be fair, and I guess to be fair, but also to point out, there hasn't been an official start of production press release by Warner Brothers. But,
right.
But, the higher
well,
up.
Bill, hold on. explore that for just a second, because that's an important thing to say.
Yes.
When people are saying, no, it's definitive, it's going to happen. It's like, no, listen, until it's a release by the studio officially, it's not official. It's just not how that works.
But it's unofficially official because it's clear that Warner Brothers wants this film out, or wanted this film out in 2018. And
that's a no.
They have been saying, whether it's Jeff Silverman or whoever else, or the chairman of the board of Time Warner, when they're talking about upcoming Warner Brothers projects, they've said that it starts production in April. Joe I'm gonna screw his name up again. Manganiello. I'm sorry, sir, if you're listening. Who's playing Deathstroke? Has said they start in April. Jeremy Irons, who plays Alfred, has said they start he said summer, early, whatever. But there's been this expectation the film goes in front of the camera. We talked about, they move Aquaman to October of 2018. There's a prime spot in July of 2018 open. And so let me just read what I wrote. I said the Batman got pushed back. And then when I asked how long, couple of months. Okay, fine. And I said, so why the delay? I don't really know, but I'll speculate. Okay. For those of you who read this, speculate, let me define that. It means I'm making a guess. I'm just assuming. I'm guessing. I'm throwing out some possibilities. Okay. I said perhaps the script really isn't ready, as Ben Affleck has been saying, and the studio has given the director and screenwriter Affleck the proper amount of time to get it right. Secondly, maybe Ben doesn't want to direct it, but still will write, produce, and star in it. As a result, they need time to hire a new director. Or, and this goes back to what Rick has said, and I said, and this would be the worst case scenario, perhaps Affleck knows that Justice League is going to suck, and here's what I think caused the uproar. And I'm hearing it's a mess, and I said, but I hope not, and is ready to bail on the DCEU before he gets G-lead again by it. So, all right, Justin, what do you think, man? I'm just gonna pause for a second before I continue on with my thoughts.
Yeah, when you put forward news that people, and here's the thing, it's not even news. It's hey, speculation.
Yeah.
And someone disagrees. I feel like, it bursts their bubble a little bit, but that's on them and not on you. You know, you're speculating. Here's how you feel. Here's what if this is a crime scene, here's a few of the pieces that this might be what happens. This may be what happens, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, man. I can't get worked up over stuff. The biggest thing here is there hasn't been a release date given.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's all people drawing their own conclusions. If anyone has to be angry, be angry at your own, expectations, right? Like,
yes. Exactly.
Here's the thing. Every single one of us on this show want Ben Affleck to do Batman.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes.
And we want it to be done well, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
The flip side of it is
so.
Ben Affleck sounds like he wants to do it right. He wants to do this movie, but to get upset, to lose your mind, and I was reading the comments this week.
Yeah.
And there's like 100 plus, so I didn't even read everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like putting together a book called Fanboy Outrage.
It's like the 12 steps or something.
Some of it is again, I feel like if you know anything about Batman on film, like, first off, the name is Batman on film. You kind of want Batman movies to exist and to be done and to be done well. So, just to get upset and to have anger directed at you doesn't make much sense.
Didn't some outlet that piggybacked on my story say BOF was a noted DC universe hater?
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, I don't understand, man. It's a bit exasperating. Like, I was frustrated, so I don't imagine how you felt during the week when after a while, it feels like someone's just poking a bear, man.
So Justin, it's pretty awesome that you actually pinpointed something that I think we should just point out again, is that this is called Batman on film. and with the exception of like the occasional Star Wars podcast, we are 99.8% Batman. Why would we exist merely to bash Batman? That would be not only asinine, we would not have a platform because we would not exist. We wouldn't last. That's the thing that drives me the most crazy is that when we get accused or I get accused or whoever that we're not Batman fans, we're just Chris Nolan movie fans. It's like, man, that's really funny. I was very clairvoyant when I was 7 years old and dressing up like Batman every day of my life and obsessed with the character when I was a little boy, that I just knew that one day this guy Chris Nolan was going to make these really cool movies, and therefore retroactively it would justify everything that I did, all the comics that I read and all the shows and cartoons and everything that I did for 20 years of my life. But I digress.
And Ryan, you talked a little bit before we started that your main issue was with how the story was presented when it was picked up by other outlets, correct?
Yeah, the way you report news, Bill, is always very thoughtful. You just kind of, and whether it's good or bad, you just kind of lay it out there. This is what I've heard. This is what's going on. But yeah, a lot of the other outlets, I think, just kind of took little bits and pieces of it and made it into what they wanted it to be, and did do what Rick is saying, where they just kind of they are not putting the story.
They tied in that a lot of them tied in that the Batman has been pushed back because Affleck knows Justice League sucks. They tied that all in as the reason. Yes, I did not say that. I did not say that. Go back and reread the article. That's complete. That's bullshit. And anyone who wrote that is an asshole. Okay. So,
basically.
I'm just telling you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the websites that think about it this way: the websites that picked up that story and said what they said about it, those websites aren't there because all they care about is Batman. Those sites do want clicks. Those sites report on whatever they want to report on so they can be in existence. But BOF has the luxury of being here for Batman, So yeah, I thought that was some BS, the way that, and of course that just fuels the fanboy fire, and it just gets worse. And then people come back to BOF and be like, "Hey, you said this," and it's not good. But in terms of the article itself, my little extra speculation is that, if you look beyond just Batman, if I try to take my Batman blinders and down just for a second, if you beyond just the Batman, think about Affleck as an artist, as Rick likes to say. He's had an insane year. He's had BBS, he's done The Accountant, Live by Night just came out Friday. Oh, and he shot Justice League too. So as an actor and a director and a producer and a writer, he's done so many things this year, not even counting his personal life, There's a reason, and then compare all that to somebody like Christopher Nolan, where he is a director. He does one movie at a time. He takes a couple years between movies to make sure things like the script and everything is right. So Affleck is working his butt off on not just Batman, but for all this other stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me throw in. We're not TMZ, so we're not going to, but he's had a hell of his personal life has sucked probably this year, and I can relate to someone who has a family going through a breakup and all that stuff, and having young children. I'm sure that's been tough on him as well. So
and there's no need for BOF to be to TMZ it up and make a news story like, hey, well, Ben Affleck's stressed out about this, so what does that mean for the Batman? That's BS. That's BS too. But all I'm saying is, as an artist, all that stuff kind of reflects the comments that he is saying about the Batman. I need time. I need to get the script right. I need to do this. So that's all I'm saying. So if he probably really does need some time to get it right, even if Warner Brothers wants him to get it out sooner, and even if the delay is a few months, that probably does kind of push it out of that 2018 window, wouldn't you say?
Yes. And
but we've heard the Gotham City Sirens things being fast tracked, and at the time I was like, how is that going to fit into 2018 with the Batman not there? But if the Batman's not there, then it's being fast tracked. So maybe that's the solution there, to keep us Batman fed for a year while we're waiting.
Yeah, and Rick, what do you think? I'm getting maybe I'm wrong, but the vibe I get is that he's really being pushed by Warner Brothers to do this. Like not just to do it, but to do it like yesterday.
Right.
Are y'all getting that kind of sense? And I think,
there's no way that he's not. And, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword that, some of these films have still done really well at the box office, right? Underperform, yes, but, I'm sure there's quite a few execs that are like, hey, these things are making money. What's this guy's problem? Let's do this. Let's get it out. And he's like, tap the brakes. It's not going to happen. Yeah. I can almost guarantee those kind of conversations are going on behind closed doors.
Absolutely. And let me ask, I'm not shocked because I've done this for almost 19 years now and I've seen all sorts of fanboy behavior, but what was just the reaction to it on these threads and on the discuss talk back on the, it was ridiculous. I mean, wanting to know who the sources were and like, this can't be legit because the source isn't cited. Well, I don't think that the two reporters who worked at the Washington Post who broke the story on Watergate and turned into Carl Bernstein and who's the other one, Rick?
I can see his face. Like we can't think of his name.
Woodward is his last name. But all the President's Men.
What did you say?
Bob Woodward.
Bob Woodward.
Yeah, and Carl Bernstein. They never revealed who Deep Throat was, ever, and until he revealed himself later, later in life. But that's not how it's done, y'all. You don't. If someone tells me stuff, that's because they know I'm not going to reveal who they are. And let me address this Justice League is a mess deal, real quick. That really got some butt hurt going. Y'all agree on that?
Yes.
Worse
you're gonna
than
You're going to get more butt hurt that you just equated Watergate to this, and that's what people are going to interpret it as. That's that's not what he just did.
No,
it's hyperbolic. He's exaggerating to make a point. The point is this: you don't give up your sources, and if you do give up your sources, guess what? You never have sources again. That's kind of the way you keep sources. Yes. And there's never been anything that this man has ever reported on that did not have a legitimate source behind it. Now, did some things might have changed and changed the trajectory of what he was told? Sure, that will happen, but that is not the same thing as someone having a shady source or lying or manipulating. Sometimes things do change, and that's just the way it rolls.
Well, fanboys, all fans, and me included, okay? When it comes to my, the love for my Dallas Cowboys, we don't like hearing things that we don't like or don't want to hear. You know what I mean? I
have some examples I can talk about.
But you don't have to go into a freak out and act socially unacceptable because and that's what it is. And it's under the, you have this mask of being anonymous on the internet. That you can act like a complete social asshole. And God forbid some of these people act like that in real life because.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the rules of the internet behave on the internet how you would be in person.
Yeah,
hopefully
you just can't exist like that in society. So, but look, here's the fact of the matter. I've been told. There's some issues with Justice League, and to say that everything is okay, and I'm going to have Mark Hughes on probably here shortly, and he's got a completely different take on the DCEU and Justice League than I do, and that's fair, and we'll discuss. But I've heard it. There's some issues with it, and just go back to the beginning when production started. It came right after the BVS fallout. They were just about to start filming. And you had how many changes were made to not only Justice League but to the DCU? You had it cut to being a two-parter down to one film. You had Mr. Snyder, the director, his the power, I guess, the best way to put it. He had over the DCEU was significantly cut and dismissed and a lot of it was taken away from him. To be frank. Ben Affleck was made a producer and had a very hands-on, an executive producer, I should say executive producer, but not a typical executive producer role because he was working on the script. He was heavily involved in, rewrites and whatever else, hands-on, very hands-on. So was Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jeff Johns, they created DC Films and had put Jeff Johns and John Berg as the senior producers in charge of it to be very hands-on on these productions. So and then on top of that, you had a set visit about a month into filming.
Yeah.
And all the outlets who went were able to post their set reports immediately after going to that is unprecedented. The three sets for Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises, my set report did not come out till a year later after I went to those sets. Mm-hmm. And that's how it's usually done. Guys, that was a PR operation right there. They put on their best face, shined everything up and got it sparkling in front of the press so they would get, because the project had some issues and they needed some positive buzz for that film. So
you need to turn the conversation around.
Exactly.
Quick.
And you know what? And it worked because a lot of the reports were very positive. So, but anyone who thinks that that's not that wasn't a PR move are kidding yourself. And let me ask you this, Rick, since you've been on sets, you're a fine actor in your own right. And if you're working on a project, it's in production, can you get the vibe that this thing is going to suck?
Yes. To be blunt, yes. You absolutely can. So, and a lot of it will come down to especially if you're able to see dailies, right? And you're actually able to see footage, and you can look at it and say, listen, this might fit into this might be a small piece that fits into a larger puzzle that works. But man, this scene is crap. It's not well acted. It's terribly written. Has weird angles. It's just this is not a good sign. You can also just tell there's an overall vibe. And if everyone is stressed out and everyone is scrambling and there's rewrites and there's people arguing with the director and the producer and the DP and et cetera, you can just sense it. Now, sometimes those things end up actually, producing a good film, but because, sometimes chaos works. However, you can tell for the most part if it's going down the right path at least or not. So yeah, you can to a large degree, you can.
All right.
So, and especially someone like Affleck, who is a consummate pro. I think that guy at this point in his career knows he's 2 weeks on a set going, this is going to suck, or this is going to be, there was years ago that my wife, this was forever ago, but she was a cocktail waitress at this nice steakhouse, and Owen Wilson was sitting at the bar talking to a buddy of his, and she overheard it. And it was a movie that he did back in like 2003 or 4, and it was with Morgan Freeman. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but he was sitting at the bar talking to his buddy, and my wife overheard the whole thing, and Owen Wilson was like, man, just every day is just a beating. He's like, this thing's gonna suck because I'm so fucking embarrassed by this movie already, and then like 2 months later you see him doing, actually the press circuit and everything. He's like, oh, it's such a pleasure to work on this film. And of course the film had bad reviews and it sucked. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it right now.
The Big Bounce?
Maybe that's it. I think that it's with him and Morgan Freeman. It was around the 2004 mark.
January 2004. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because it might have been it was probably in 2003 when she heard that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because he was, because he's from Dallas. So he was, he's here quite often. But, anyway, I always think about that. Like that guy knew. He knew when he was on the set. He hadn't seen the film yet. He knew it was going to suck. So anyway, that's a little anecdotal thing for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say, just to jump in, as, people like to say we're anti-DC, which I think is, if I was British, I'd say it's bollocks. But
there you go, Tom.
There you go. Hey, that's for Tom. There, Tom.
Rubbish.
It's rubbish.
I just wanted to say, personally myself, this is just Justin saying, I am excited about the Justice League. That being said, I do know that there was, behind the scenes issues and all that, course correcting is what we'll call it, right?
Yeah, we didn't even bring that up. I mean, that's what they called it. Course correcting, yes.
Yeah, course correcting. Okay, and I think that happens on lots of stuff. Even with Rogue One that just came out, they had to fix some stuff. They did some reshoots and some edits. But I read something yesterday, and as we were talking, it was just a little Ray Fisher, who plays Cyborg, he Instagrammed a care package that Henry Cavill sent him, and in the note it said, "It has been quite the battle shooting this movie, but I could imagine no better people to have struggled alongside. Thank you so much for your hard work, tenacity, and great humor. See you next time. It has been an absolute pleasure." So that was the note he sent Ray Fisher, and I think it said he sent everybody.
The casting crew, yeah.
Yeah. And so that, right there, even the actor has acknowledged, man, it was a battle doing this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the movie's going to be terrible, but it could have had really, man, this was shaky. Going into this, we had no idea what was going to happen, because remember, it was dark for a while. There's no news. They're supposed to be shooting this movie right after BVS, so you haven't heard anything. And so, like Bill already explained, a lot of stuff got shuffled around, and, there's still time to hopefully, rectify any issues that were there. But, even Affleck the other day, and this is what Rick sent out yesterday, the quote he had about, there's a rebirth and it's a lot of fun and all that stuff. But it's okay, like you said, to want good stuff to come out from stuff that we love. You can't sit there blindly and just hope.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, it's a movie, and if it comes out and it sucks, it's like, man, but just messages to fans, course correct your attitude. So anyways, just my whole thing with this Justice League and people losing their minds and just, different points of view. Here's the thing. Even on this site where, Bill and Rick might be a little more, one eyebrow arched, right, to the Justice League movie, I'm a little more I'm just hopeful because it's something I want to see, but I'm not ignorant to where I knew there was some problems, right? That being said, I'm not losing my mind over it because someone has said something contrary to what I may personally think, right? And and it's civil, and it doesn't have to be this B rating and name calling and just the internet ugliness. So yeah, course correct your attitude, people. And that's the type of stuff that, going back to the Affleck stuff, that's one reason it's almost like it could push him away. Man, I don't want to be involved in this. You guys keep asking me the same question every time, there's a press conference. He's not even doing press for Batman, and people are asking him about Batman. It's I'd be embarrassed to ask him the question.
I would too, but comes from, here's how that works. They get whatever the outlet, the editor is sending them directions, ask him about Batman, because they know, why. That's what it's going to get.
Yeah.
Clicks and so forth. And but I would not ask him if it was me personally, and I'm sure he was sick and tired of asking. I would have been. All right, jumping on with us now is a longtime Batman on Film reader and contributor, and does his own thing at Forbes.com. Mark Hughes. How you doing, Mark? Thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank y'all for having me on. I'm doing good, Bill. Thank you.
So just to get you up to speed, what we've talked about is basically the Batman, Ben Affleck, his back and forth, him and hawing about, I'm going to do it, or I'm only going to do it if the script's right, and then I guess the gist of it is I posted an article earlier in the week that the production had been pushed back. I know they were going to plan on starting in April-ish over at Warner Brothers in Burbank, and it's now been pushed back. What my source told me was a couple months, but didn't. I don't know what a couple months means. It could be 2, could it be 6, it could, whatever. And then you wrote an article checking into it and confirmed through your sources that it indeed been pushed back. So that's where we're at. So what's the deal with the pushback, man?
Well, first of all, it's I realize a lot of people say that, well, there was no official announcement, and that's totally true. And I mentioned in my article that there was technically never a set start date, but we all know that the plan was, and they said publicly, the plan was that they expected to get started in spring, and around the start of March, they expected to be into production. And it turns out the they in that equation was much more other people than Affleck. And about a week or two ago, it became increasingly apparent that they weren't really going to meet that plan. So the film isn't going to get, they don't expect it to get started at that time now. And all of the preparations that had momentum building behind it has slowed down significantly. And the starting, and they were beginning and prepping in Burbank, as you said.
Yeah, I mean there are people have been hired and were working on this film. That's I know that for a fact. Yeah,
they were moving full steam ahead. That was happening, and then the brakes got hit, and the real decision. I think the realization that okay, it's kind of, shit or get off the pot time, hit last week or just before this week, really. And that it became obvious that no, it's not ready for production. Affleck's comments, I think it's important to remember that he's always been consistent about saying he's not doing anything unless he has a script that feels is great. He's always said he plans to do it. I think one aspect of this, one piece of this puzzle that people forget is that when he's making these comments, he's not just talking to the press and he's not just talking to us. There's conversations going on behind the scenes with the studio. So when he says, I plan to do this, but not till I'm ready and I need time to get ready, there are a lot of pressures on him to meet desired start dates and schedules. And he has to do what he can to kind of send the message and to kind of say, hey, hit the brakes a little bit. So I think that those remarks when he was saying he wanted on the one hand to reassure people that he wants to do this, he plans to do it, he's working on it, he expects to do it. Yes, assuming everything goes well, and he doesn't necessarily have a reason to think it won't. I mean, when he says, I'm not going to do it unless the script's great, well, he's writing the script. So he doesn't mean, look, I don't really think I can write a great script. He's not saying that. He's saying this isn't going to really get underway and nobody should be talking about this until the guy who's in charge of the entire project, who's writing, directing, and starring in it says, okay, I'm ready. And there were just realistically a lot of factors involved with a big studio like that, with that much money. When things get moving, if momentum goes too far, once you get too much behind something, then it's hard to slow it down without it costing a lot of money. At the point that you have, like you said earlier, Bill, that when you're hiring people to work on a production and you're getting locations and everything else, that's money, and that's real money. And then if you have to cancel that or pull back, then that can become a problem. And they were kind of at that point of having to make a decision, and he was doing his best to make it clear that whatever investments and whatever momentum was there, if they had to slam the brakes on and it cost a lot of money and some stuff falls off the dashboard, don't blame him as the driver, who told everybody we're going the wrong way right now.
Yeah, we all talked earlier. There seems to be a little bit of Warner Brothers really, I don't want to say, what's the right analogy I want to use? Well, I just kind of pushing him to do this like, yesterday. And he's, right. Do you think that, let me say it this way. Let me frame it this way. Warner Brothers wants to be in the Ben Affleck director business for the foreseeable future. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, okay. Definitely.
So could he have played a power card and said, "Look, I know you want this film out next year. I know you want it to go in production in April. I'm not ready. So, if you want to stay in the Ben Affleck business, you're gonna have to work with me here." I'll say it.
Which, by the way, it's kind of a quasi Chris Nolan hand that he's playing there. If you think about it, he did 4 years between his Batman films. And I think that Affleck is just one of those guys he is a perfectionist. And I just personally don't think that I don't personally think, and this is speculation, big neon sign, I just don't think that the script is where he wants it. And you know what? He's just not going to do it until he's ready. And I think that's fantastic. And I think we'll ultimately all benefit from those decisions.
I'll say there's a huge portion of this equation that cannot be overstated, and that really has to be understood. That is probably one of the biggest influences on this decision and what's happened, and that's Live by Night. Up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, everyone expected this to be a big film. This was a possible Oscar contender. Mm-hmm. Suddenly the reviews came out and they were bad. And he's been doing a whole lot of press touring trying to talk about this. And so I don't, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but this has had a big impact on him. He's very upset about the reactions to this film. He's very disappointed, as any artist would be, and that's not something anyone anticipated a few weeks ago happening. So,
and to add
really
insult,
hit a point.
Yeah, and to add insult to injury, Mark, don't you think it also is problematic for him, his psyche, that when he's on this circuit and doing these interviews, all anyone wants to ask him about is Batman. They're asking these questions about Live by Night, but they're just like, and now let's get to Batman, and I don't think that helps.
Yeah, it's an insult, and I mean, a lot of people, I know a lot of people say, hey, what do you expect? Batman's the big film. Well, what I expect is professionals to act professional, and to say, we're going to be respectful of the fact that this guy keeps asking us not to keep asking him about this. He has a film he's working on and promoting right now. He's made it clear he wants to stay focused on that. He's made it clear that he thinks he said all he needs to say about Batman and has nothing else to say and doesn't want to clarify again. And the more times he's put in that position, the more frustrating it is if you've done a passion project that you were really expecting to get a different reception, and suddenly nobody, it's right now it's in the 30% range. I think maybe 33 to 35%, or maybe lower now at Rotten Tomatoes, for example. That's not where he wanted it to be. He's not happy with that. I mean, I can tell you flat out, nobody, of course, would be happy with that. But Ben Affleck in particular, he takes this very seriously. He's a perfectionist. And when it's a project that he holds near and dear to his heart and has been repeatedly trying to do and has repeatedly been forced to delay in order to work on other productions like Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, which ran for months. They were huge, long, grueling, exhausting productions. Mm-hmm. Then he has to jump into Live by Night and work hard. And, he had a lot of sleepless nights making that movie, trying to get things where he wanted them to be. And to have gone through all of that and then step back, and here's this big labor of love, and everyone is just kind of taking a crap on it. And then when you try to talk to them about it, all they want to do is say, yeah, but what about Batman? Well, do the math. And that's something that has happened. The fallout from all of that exhaustion, all of that pressure, all of those delays on Live by Night, that's all kind of come to a head just in the last few weeks, and really in the couple of weeks, the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the delay on the production. So when he was saying he expected to get started in spring, he probably thought this movie's going to hit limited release in December. It'll do well. It'll generate some Oscar buzz. He'll be kind of feeling good. He'll be looking and thinking about his next, okay, here comes Batman. He'll be able to kind of get his head around that. And instead, look what's happened. So that's really going to play a role. And I don't want to get into personal stuff, but it's just, I think we all need to remember that, when the hits just keep on coming, it can be really demoralizing. And I think all he's asking for is the chance to kind of take a step back, catch his breath, and do what he's been trying to tell everyone, including the studio, that he needed all along, which was room to remain excited about this project so he can finish that damn script. And he doesn't want to work on it when his heart's not in it. And right now his heart hasn't really been in that. He needs to get re-energized, relax, take care of his stuff that's going on in his life that he needs to take care of. And fans who want a great movie should want that and respect the filmmaker enough that we want him to be in the right place and ready and excited to continue and move ahead, at his own pace.
You think there's any chance at all he doesn't do Batman?
I'm not going to lie. I think there's a chance. I think there's always a chance. I think that those concerns were much more pronounced a couple of weeks when the reviews first started hitting, when those numbers came in from limited release and were so low and it was performing so poorly in limited release. And then, and that was such a shock. And then when those first reviews were rolling in and it was clear that it was getting, really bad reviews from the critics, which I think is unfair. I don't know how many of you've seen it, but I thought it was a terrific movie. And I think people are kind of, I don't know. I think it's at a point where people kind of were looking for things to complain about in that movie. And I don't mean to dismiss, like when people don't agree with me, so I'm going to dismiss their views. I'm just saying when I look at those reviews, I think I see a lot of instances of things that are people taking something minor and kind of blowing that up into something bigger, and then giving a negative review to a film that they're generally saying is very well made, well acted, all the components are good. They don't like how they were put together. They don't necessarily like the final 10 or 15 minutes. But so anyway, I think that there was a chance that the odds of him walking away were probably bigger, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was probably more upset. I think he's getting his head around it now. I think he still has a lot of disappointment and is still dealing with that and is doing his best. But I think the difference between now and then is that before he had not started taking the steps dealing with it. He was in that first stage, which he had every right to be in, of just kind of sitting there, letting it wash over him, going, damn it, and being very disappointed.
There seems to have been a little industry buzz that he might not do it. And looking at take it for what you will, Twitter, and Steve over at Collider even made a post, wrote that I know what he said on Jimmy Kimmel last night, but I'm not so sure he's going to do Batman. And
yeah, it's fair.
Go ahead.
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
I just think he wasn't going to, he's made it clear in the past. I sympathize a lot with Stephen because I've done the same thing where I make it clear that if I have something worth writing an article on, then I'm going to write the article. But Twitter, I'm just expressing my views and my feelings. And sometimes I'll say stuff that's a little more like, well, I hear rumors and whispers, and this isn't anything I'd put in a formal official article, but here's how I feel. And I think he was just trying to get across that he feels, and what he said was that he feels less confident, and we don't know what his confidence level was at before or now, so it's hard to judge. I mean, it could have gone from 75% down to 50. It could have gone from 50 to 25. It could have gone from 90 to 80. So it's a little hard to know, but I suspect he's hearing a lot of things that we've heard, and then he also has his own, and I don't know that. That's pure speculation on my part, but it's hard to say. But yeah, going back to your question, is there a chance Affleck won't do this? Yeah, there's still a chance. I mean, we don't know, we can't say, and it's unfortunate, but he's, I think he's going to do it. I think the odds are strongly in favor of him doing it. I don't think that after all of this and after all of us knowing there was difficulty and questions, I don't think he would have gone on Kimmel Live and said, yes, I'm going to direct this picture.
You know what, Mark? And I think that he should have told Kimmel's producer not for him not to talk. He didn't want to talk about Batman because that seems to be, I think, that caused problems from him ultimately because he's saying adamantly now, yes, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. Give me time. And he may not end up doing it. And then, you got to go back, or it kind of paints him into a corner of like, well, I've said it on national TV. And I've had a lot of people who've complained about my article about the pushback. They said, well, he went on, Kimmel last night and look what he said. And, send me the video. And I'm like, these people don't tell the truth all the time, right? I mean, that's just the case. You know what?
I think Affleck isn't going to. They can't be candid all the time, right?
Let me. I think that's true, but I would say that with Affleck, knowing the situation and what it is, I don't think that Affleck. I mean, I think a lot of people that can't be candid, it's because they're not in a position to, and they're beholden more to the studios. I don't think Affleck is in that position, and I think he could very easily, if he didn't want to say that, he would have told Kimmel, don't ask, or he could have resorted to his same fallback position and said, look, if it comes together the way I want, I'll do it. Otherwise I won't. He could have easily continued that, or just said, I'm not going to talk about it. He let them ask him, and he went as far out on the limb as saying, yes, I plan to direct this. I'm going to direct it. I think he wants to, and I think at this point, honestly, I'll put this out there, I think he was previously looking at these other more prestige projects as the things that were really cementing his reputation. Now I think The Batman has become the film that he sees, that he's starting to look at as the thing that's going to help him overcome the critical stumble with Live by Night, and reestablish and reassert, hey, this guy, I mean, if he comes out with a movie that matches or exceeds the Chris Nolan Batman films, that is a risk and a gamble, that's one of the things he loves about making movies, is the gamble of it, the high risk, and it's like high risk poker. And he said that himself. And what bigger stakes could there be than saying, I'm going to go all in on betting I can top a Chris Nolan Batman movie? I could see him doing that.
And he's a gambler. I've seen him at a blackjack table at the MGM. True story. Hey, Mark, question. Do you think it's mutually inclusive that he will star in the film and direct? In other words, is it a possibility in your mind that he could still do the film but not necessarily direct it? I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I pointed out, I think, in my article even, that if he's got his script written and if he's starring in the movie, then if another director, if they made the decision, or if he decided and said, look, guys, I am going to be continually doing rewrites and touch-ups on this script. I really need to focus on wearing this giant rubber suit or whatever that's so uncomfortable. I'm going to spend half my time trying to unzip it to go to the bathroom, so I can't. Maybe he would maybe he would hand off the directing duties to someone else. That's possible. And then he could act in some sort of assistant directing position. He would be heavily involved in the editing. And tell me honestly, how many fans would really, even though we all want Ben Affleck, we've all said for a long time, Ben Affleck's the top guy to direct Batman. How many of us would really be able to say we're disappointed and have low expectations for a Batman movie written by Ben Affleck, starring Ben Affleck, with Affleck as assistant director and editor, that's directed by someone like Matt Reeves or George Miller? Right. I mean, honestly,
I wouldn't be at all. I would be just more curious how he would handle those questions. But
no, I would be. I couldn't see Miller doing the film with Affleck. I mean, it would.
Well, Mark was just being hypothetical.
I know. I think this.
Casey Affleck might be in the mix for that pure hypothetical.
I think that
somebody
that'd be fun. Raise both my eyebrows just went up.
I think there would be a bit of I know for me personally, so I can't speak for everybody here. I would be disappointed, and it would take a little of the luster off of the film if he didn't direct it, because that's one of the things I think him directing it. He's a great director, and I want to see him do it. I think that's always been the whole point, not just him playing Batman or writing it, also directing it. So I don't know.
I think he knows that
there would
too.
Be like 10,000 of us that would be disappointed. I just don't think the masses would necessarily care. I don't think, first of all, the masses they're not director savvy anyway. They don't really know who's directing what and whatnot.
Mark's point of it being a prestige project for him, I think he knows that, and him being the director of it is a very key element in that. And but I really hope that the delay will help all of that and help him refocus himself and reevaluate things and just have the time to get it right.
Yeah.
Let me bring this up, Mark, real quick, and see what you think about this. And guys, y'all chime in, please, if you have a question or you want to comment. Is there any part of him, and I'm just throwing this out, as any of the multitude of possibilities of why there's a delay. And I think we all know why there's a delay. We've just been talking about it for the last 30 minutes, but. Could there be a part of him looking to see how Justice League does before he commits to doing Batman, which would follow Justice League? Because, what I'm saying is, if Justice League has the same sort of reaction critically and at the box office and, amongst fans that BVS did, that's going to have an effect. I mean, clearly that would have an effect on a solo Batman film.
Yeah, my problem with if that was the case, he would have to wait until November before he was willing to decide whether or not to direct this film, which is possible. I think it would be possible to take a month or two off from the writing, push things back, then get back involved. And then I think that's possible. I think it's highly unlikely. I think at this point that it's more likely production will get underway sometime in the summer, even if it's late summer. I think it will happen prior to Justice League. I do think there's a possibility that with all the other pressures that are the main things, is he possibly also waiting and saying, you know what, I want to look at a cut of Justice League.
Yeah.
Because when I see that film, I may want to step back in the editing booth and be involved in trying to do more on that film, and he may be anticipating an extra workload there. And if that's the case, if he's thinking that could happen, then I think that's reasonable to think maybe he would do that. I think it's reasonable to think he might be actually waiting to see the reaction to Wonder Woman when that hits in June, and that he may be tentatively saying, okay, Wonder Woman will come out. We'll see how the reviews and the reaction is to that when the first reviews come out, and then depending, we'll schedule the announcement for, the Batman. But at the end of the day, honestly, I think his biggest thing is when he's ready. I think there are external factors, but I think he's first and foremost going to move based on when he's ready to move and when he wants to move. And that's the real key deciding factor.
Mm. And there you have it. I think I don't think that there's really anything else we can say on that. I think that is absolutely accurate. It's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds in the coming months. What's really next for Affleck? I guess really just Justice League in terms of making his rounds with the press, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, Live by Night will run its course, and then Justice League is a November release. So he can lay low for a while and avoid some questions to a certain extent, but it'll be interesting to see what happens between here and Justice League, if we get something more definitive or if it's something that we have to wait for. But I think we can all agree that Affleck is not going to do this until he's ready, and hopefully that means it will happen and we will all benefit from it as lovers of not only Batman but of cinema as well. If not, then I don't know what the hell they're going to do, they being Warner Brothers. I can't even get my head wrapped around that, but they know that they need him, and I'm sure he knows and understands that that's his position, and that's a position of power. And
I'll give you this much. I think there's no way that he's going to walk away from the project entirely. He'll keep working on writing it, even if with Jeff Johns has to come back in and work, side by side to lessen the load on that. He's going to star in the film. He's going to be Batman in that movie. The only question that anyone has really had is if he directs it. He says he's going to. I expect him to. I think the odds strongly favor it. I think there's still a lingering possibility that things could not go well and that he might walk away, and that he doesn't expect that, but it could happen. If it does, this project will survive. The DCU will survive it. He'll still be Batman. He still will have written it, and they're not going to hand this off to just somebody who's never directed a movie or something before. It'll be in the hands of somebody he trusts, that he wants to work with, that Affleck personally handpicks for this project. And it'll move forward. Batman has we've seen him go through a lot of trials in the past. He's had ups and downs in with the franchise, and he's always survived, and he'll always be there.
Yeah. One last question, Mark, and I'll let you go. I know it's early over there. Stakes high for the DCEU in 2017? Is there a lot riding on Wonder Woman, and then, of course, Justice League in the fall?
Absolutely. I think that's the big thing that's really with Wonder Woman, I think, is if Wonder Woman does well, it takes a lot of pressure off of Justice League to come in and be like the last chance. If Wonder Woman was a critical failure, and if it also underperformed or had a bad box office turn, then I really think people would look at Justice League as kind of like the last Hail Mary chance to get things on track before Warner had to delay everything except Batman. And I think even then, if both of these films did poorly, I think that we would probably see a huge meeting to decide how to move forward with the Batman project. I think there would be changes at the top at Warner. But that's all doomsday, apocalyptic, worst-case scenario. Wonder Woman seems to be getting a lot of positive reaction at the studio. If that film does well, then then Justice League basically just has to come in and be more fun than Batman v Superman was to make critics happier, to make mainstream audiences happier. That everything I've seen suggests that's the case. So as long as it gets a better reception and performs better at the box office than Batman v Superman, they'll declare victory and they'll keep moving on.
It's got to make $1 billion for them to be happy. Yes.
Yeah, I think actually I would say it depends a lot. If the better Wonder Woman performs, then it makes it easier for Justice League to do in the 900 million range. I think it has to top Batman v Superman, and it has to top it by a good 100 million. Yeah. I would say. So it's got to get close to the $1 billion mark. If it doesn't, then there's going to be some serious questions asked, and there's going to be some people are going to be updating their resumes, I'm sure. And then I think what happens is if we have a mixed, one film does well, one film doesn't situation, or both films get mixed reactions, not bad, but not great, then I think we're in a situation where the slate, they start looking at, what I talked about in an article not long ago, where it becomes Batman, Gotham City Sirens, Suicide Squad 2, Man of Steel 2. You start seeing that, but everyone should take note of Green Lantern Corps and the fact that they're moving forward with that. Something I think a lot of fans miss is the fact that if Batman is pushed back, even just a little bit, if that film goes into late summer, then it's not possible to open in 2018. 2018 becomes off the table. When that happens, a lot of other projects are going to move to the forefront to get attention, not for a 2018 opening, but just because if they're trying to get Batman out in 2018, all of the money, all of the energy goes into that project. Instead, we're now looking at, hey, now Green Lantern Corps is getting announced. Now they're moving forward on Green Lantern.
And that was like
that changes dynamics.
Yeah. And that was one of the riskiest movies and one of the final movies they said would even come out at the time too. So
Exactly. So that's, if fans were worried that everything was just going to become the Batman show in the DCU and everything would have to constantly tie into Batman, well, one silver lining of a possible delay of the Batman is you still get the Batman in 2019, and meanwhile, other projects are able to move up and get more attention because everyone's not focusing their attention on a Batman movie that has to come out in, a year and a half.
I think that it's an impossible feat now for it to be 2018. It seems like for him to start production in the summer or late summer, whenever, and then have that film ready for a July release the following year, which just seems to be the only slot that they could actually put it in with Aquaman moved back and so forth. I just don't. You're kind of rushing it to me. So
yeah, I think it's improbable. I don't think it's impossible yet, but I think it's going to get at the point we're into May and June, and it's not ready to. They're not talking about starting pre-production or starting production. If by May and June you haven't heard that it's ready to begin production, then I think it's all bets are off, and it's a 2019 release for sure.
Do you think? I keep asking you questions. I'm sorry, Mark.
That's okay.
Green Lantern Corps. Do you think that the Green Lantern movie from 2011 is going to have any kind of
nope
fog or no, not tied to it, but affect people's perception of what the film is, the general audience? They did. You know what I mean? They had Green Lantern a couple years ago. That sucked. Why do I want to see this for?
Well, consider it's not when's the earliest it come out? If they they would hypothetically have to rush that film, get the script ready by summer, get it into production by the fall, just to get it out in 2019. It'll be a 2019 or 2020 release. By then, it will have been 9 years since the failed Green Lantern movie, which is about as long as the time between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And not a lot of people saw that Green Lantern movie too, so I think it'll.
Right. Well, I think those of us on this podcast make up 50% of the audience that watch that movie in theaters. Right.
All right. You worried about the DCEU, Mark?
No, I'm not generally, because I step back and I look at this and I realize these are huge brands. They're global brands that even without movies are able to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars a piece for each of these main characters, and it's going to survive. We survived Batman and Robin. We survived the '90s, so if we can get through that, yeah. Superman has gotten through the things that Superman survived. Quest for Peace, and just over and over, so much has happened. Right now, they have DCEU had two of the biggest top 10. I believe they're still both in the top 10 blockbusters of the year. We're about to have two more. I think Justice League is easily going to do 900 million, worst case. I think it'll top $1 billion. And it's hard to look at a franchise and a large connected universe of major global brands that are pulling in top 10 blockbuster numbers each year and think that there's really a lot of trouble there.
I think,
but yeah, they have work to do. They've got work to
do. You're way more optimistic about Justice League than I am, and I hope, Mark, I'm on for the record, I hope when I see that movie with you, most likely in November or late October, that I come out of that with a big smile on my face and give you a big high five, because I want to be I want that film to succeed. I truly do. Even though I've written that I've heard there were some issues going into it. There were a lot of issues. I mean, I think that's undeniable that the film started off a bit of a mess, and there was a lot of changes made to it. I hope they pull it off. And I hope it's successful, because I do love the DC universe. And I'm a Batman guy first and foremost. Batman will survive. He's like the cockroach of the DC world, because you're right, he survived Batman and Robin and then came back for the Dark Knight trilogy. And there'll be another Batman even after Ben Affleck. So, I just hope
I would remind everybody that, I loved Batman versus Superman, obviously, and I walked out thinking that you were going to be like, holy crap, that was great. And we were completely on polar opposite sides of it. But I'll say this. If you I would just ask everyone, look at Batman versus Superman for a minute. Imagine going into that movie that they had previously had a big film that failed critically and that everyone said, you need to change and make this movie more fun. And then what would Batman v Superman be like if that was the messaging, and if they had Jeff Johns come in and rewrite the script with Ben Affleck helping, and then Ben Affleck was in the editing room helping put that movie together? What is there? Is there a good chance that when you look at the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman, that movie would have been something that you all would have liked a lot more, and that audiences would have liked a lot more? Realistically, I think. If we think of it that way, there were a lot of rewrites and there was a lot of shuffling on the front end with Justice League. But I think it's important to remember those things were all positive developments trying to fix what was going on, and they were being responsive to reactions. And at the time, Bill, we all kind of thought about it and said, well, is this just shuffling decks, chairs on the deck of the Titanic? Is this just for appearance sake? Yeah. Well, obviously it's turned out it's not. Jeff Johns is heavily involved now. Ben Affleck was in the editing room and has been working heavily on this film and doing rewrites. So I think when we worry about it, just ask ourselves, what would the ultimate cut of Batman versus Superman have been like if Jeff Johns was there helping, with Ben Affleck there helping on re-scripting the film, Ben Affleck helping in the editing room, and if they were doing all of this with the knowledge that they had to make something that was better than what came before.
And and think about this. Would you agree, Mark, that they still have time to do reshoots and stuff if they need to? I mean, there's time to do that, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of time. I'll say, I've been asking constantly nonstop about this film in different directions and different people. And there are people who've been very honest with me when there were problems or concerns before, people who've been very blunt with me about what the Affleck situation right now. There was a point when I was contacting people and was like, oh my God, I'm hearing that Ben Affleck may be stepping out of this movie, and that it was really worried. There are people out there who are willing to be honest about problems and fears about these movies. And with Justice League, everything that I've heard during the production and the filming and with the dailies and when they're looking at this film day after day, Jeff Johns, Ben Affleck, studio, everyone is keeping a close watch on this film and looking at what's happening as it's being shot. And I haven't heard any reactions suggesting that anyone is looking for reshoots or that anyone was unhappy with what they were seeing in the footage. That could all change when it comes in, when they get a cut of the movie, when they see that, when people sit down and that's going to happen fairly soon, probably in the next few weeks, in the next month or two, we're probably going to start hearing leaks about the reactions to that. So we'll have a better idea. So I cannot say remotely at this point that, everyone thinks it's a good movie and it's great and it's going to be, we don't know yet, but we're going to know soon. But right now, I do know that as far as expectations for reshoots, they have scheduled in pickups and things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I meant, pickups, yeah.
But nothing so far that says, oh my God, we're going to have to reshoot this entire thing. Oh my God, we're going to have to add this. Oh my God, this doesn't work. Nothing like that. I have not heard any whispers about that kind of thing. So take that for what it's worth,
Awesome. All right, Mark, plug some stuff, man, before you go.
You can find me at Forbes, as always, at Forbes.com/Mark Hughes. I'm sorry, it's very early here. You can find me at Forbes.com/sites/Mark Hughes. You can find me on Twitter at Mark Hughes Films.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming on. Go back to
All
bed,
right, guys. Yeah,
Mark,
that's what I'm heading.
Mark, thanks, buddy.
Take care, guys.
All right,
thanks.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks again to Mark for getting up early out there in California and coming in and talking a little DCEU / the Batman talk with us. So, Rick, what's your thoughts, man? It was Mark had a lot to say, so what's your take?
Well, Mark always has a lot to say. It's one of the things I love about him. And as always, man, he has great insight on stuff, and he has his own sources, and he has his own analysis and everything. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I liked his statement. I'm going to paraphrase him here, but when he was directing it at you specifically, he said, "When I came out of BVS, I loved it," and thinking that you guys would kind of hold hands into the sunset on that, or how he phrased it.
Yeah, that's true.
to the contrary, and that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yes, we did. If you didn't know, me and Mark and I, let me be grammatically correct here. Mark and I saw it together at the press screening in Hollywood, and back in March of last year. BVS we're talking about. And Mark, I will say, Mark legitimately liked the film because his first thing after was he was happy with it. And I was like,
well, I know what you were like. You were texting me, and,
yes.
and you weren't going to reveal any information, and even to someone you trust because you're on an embargo.
Yeah.
But I could just tell by tone that you were not. You weren't happy. I could just tell.
The only person I broke the embargo with was announcer Rachel because I got back to the hotel. See, I told this story before. She's gone to all these screenings with me. And she couldn't go to this one because it was press only, and that was a red light for me when it came to this film. And she said, "What do you think?" And I went, I was bummed, dude. How fired up were we for Batman v Superman up until March? I mean, for the year before, we were doing the podcast for 3 or 4 months at that time. We were like one of the biggest cheerleaders for that film of anybody, right?
Sure, absolutely, and I liked it a lot more than you did. No, my thing on that film has been, with multiple viewings of a movie, you grow to like them better or love them or like them less, and sometimes that happens. Like, there's just certain films that over time I've actually liked less as the years have gone on. Superman 2 is one of those films. Mm-hmm. It just kind of didn't age well for me, like I really wanted it to. Not the original Richard Donner film, but the sequel. There's films like that, and BVS has been like that for me. Is I watch it and I'm like, I just don't get any joy out of watching this film. It's not that I hate it. It's not, the things I liked about it I still like. The things I don't like about it have just really been under a spotlight or so.
when she asked me, I said, I don't think I like this movie, and I was bummed. I really was. It bummed me out totally.
Did you ever read Zacky's review by any chance? It was kind of funny. He's like, this is
I did.
A fun house something version of the DC universe. ... I'm pretty sure I hated it. And when I read that review, that was like, I'm pretty sure I hated it. And that might have been something he posted on his personal Facebook, not in his official HuffPost review. But I remember just reading that, going, man, that's reminds me a lot of Bill. I just think you, I think you just kind of hated it, you know.
And I was just disappointed. I really was. It disappointed me because I wanted to love it and I didn't like it. And I like Ben Affleck as Batman. If you could take away, you know, I don't want to go down this road again. We're going down that rabbit hole of talking BVS, but you know, the killing and so forth and so on. But it's just not like I'll put in, and I'm pointing to my DVD collection here in the office, Blu-ray collection. As I say that, I'll put in Dark Knight trilogy, and I'll watch those over and over again. I'll put in Batman '89 and watch it. You know, hell, I'll even throw in Forever. I know you hate Forever, but that's a different, you know.
I don't hate Forever. Yeah,
I'll throw in Forever and watch, you know, bits and pieces of it. I just can't. I get no joy of watching that film whatsoever. Yeah. So
it's 100% joyless.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah, and a film can be dark and still be fun and a joy to watch.
The Dark Knight is a joy to watch.
Yes. Okay. So anyway.
Right.
So,
all right. So, but moving on from all that. Anyway, but that was one of my first kind of takeaways. I like that, and really all this just to get to that one point. But you know, one of the things that struck me about what Mark said is that he is himself now saying that, you know, there's a possibility that Ben Affleck might not do this. Now, he made it perfectly clear that he thinks that he has an overwhelming sense that he will, but he's not ruling it out, and that's significant because.
That's a change from what he wrote last week.
Yeah, and to his credit, he explained that shift and made sense of it, meaning this was also before Live by Night was getting its ass kicked the way it was, and Affleck's just beat down, and he may just want to take a break, and just, you know, and WB may have to just move on, DC may have to move on, but so those are my biggest takeaways, and you know, I think that this conversation with Mark was very much needed. Because, you know, right around the time you posted your article and shit kind of hit the fan with fanboys on our end, Mark simultaneously was posting his article on Forbes, and they had nothing to do with one another on the timing or anything like that, but it was just the juxtaposition of the two. There was certainly a tonal difference, and where he was far more optimistic, you were far more, I don't want to use the word cynical, because really I think you were just more, I don't want to call him unrealistic. I'm not trying to be PC here. I'm really truly trying to find the proper words. You guys were sort of diametrically opposed.
Yeah, we said
in terms
the same
of what
thing,
you thought would and wouldn't happen.
The production got pushed back.
But today,
his article
was a lot of common ground today.
Yeah, there was. And I think Mark and I are close in our opinion of the DCEU, or I would say wanting it to be good, but I'm admittedly way more. They're going to have to win me over. Does that make more sense? They need to win me over, and I think Mark is won over because he did like BVS. He liked Suicide Squad more than I did. So, but I think we both root for them to succeed. I'm just not going to sit here and say everything is awesome and everything is fine, because it's not. And honestly, and I'll say this, if Mark was still on with this, I would say even what he's written, what he said today on the podcast is much, it's different than what he's been writing in the past. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And I said that earlier, and to his defense and his credit, he has explained why there's a little bit of a tonal difference in what he's written and what he's saying now, because just by virtue of everything that's going on with Live by Night, and he touched upon a lot of the same things I did in terms of, you know, Affleck's an artist, and he only takes so much. He might be exhausted and just look, I am just worn out. I can't give this what it needs to have in this time frame, and therein lies the possibility that he may not do it. But I don't know, Bill. I go back and forth on this, man. I'm almost of the opinion that if he does it, he's all in, meaning director, everything. If he doesn't do it, then I think he's not going to do anything.
All right, I know you got to get out of here because you got to bring your girls to swimming. So plug some stuff, man.
Well, as far as plugging, I would just say please follow me on Twitter, Shoe Rick. And if you're into politics, please go to the Left Shoe Politics YouTube page. I need some subscribers. It's something I have not really requested, but I'm requesting it now. Please, I would really appreciate it. And really, that's all I have. Rachel will take me out, but just keep supporting this show because this is the most important thing that I do outside of work and family. And go Cowboys.
All right, Justin and Ryan. Rick is out of here, but we can finish up and kind of just sum up everything we've talked about today. Yeah. What'd you think about what Mark had to say, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of his points were stuff we've kind of heard as well and agree with. I mean, I understand what he's saying. I don't have a whole bunch of, I don't have contacts. I just what I hear and read, and I form my own opinions, and and I still am a wait and see kind of guy.
It seems like me and Mark are about on the same page, but he's on one side of the fence and I'm on the other. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, what you both say is true from a certain point of view.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
He's much more optimistic about Justice League than I am. But I meant that. I totally meant that. When I see that film, I want to say that was a hell of a film. And I wanted to ask him, but we didn't get a chance. I wanted to say, I think we've talked about it before in the show is, did they overcourse correct? If they go too far the other way to make it fun, it's fun. Oh, look how much fun we're having when it's fun. This is a fun movie. So,
I think they'll know that soon too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if they are going to have a rough cut here, then they will. But here's the issue, guys, is that the people who are seeing this, which would be the higher ups at Warner Brothers, there's a little bit of what they want, what they think is good, may not be what the audience think is good and successful. If you get my point.
I hope that Johns has the power to say no. This this has to be that
exactly.
Well, actually, Wonder Woman should be our first test of that.
Yes.
But right now for Justice League, that's got to be. He's got to be able to say, this is what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. You're exactly right. That's where I'm thinking that Johns is able, hopefully that's where Johns is able to come in and be that, I don't want to say the word fan, but just to be cause being a fan isn't a bad thing. It's when you become, irrational, when you hold on to things so tight. But if he's man, this works great on film and the story that we're trying to create. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it has the heart. I think that's the issue that people have. Is this the heart of who Superman is? And is this the heart of who Batman is? And, that's what we
hope,
need
optimism, fun, and heart. All those things.
Yeah. And those aren't bad things, I think. But they
had to do something after BBS.
They become almost like a joke. Like when you keep hearing it, like in the face of what came before, even with what The Rock's meeting, if we can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he had that with DC this week. I was excited because that was the one movie I was like, that ain't ever going to get made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. Just because it hasn't felt like there's been traction, and The Rock's in every movie that comes out every month, like when's he going to film? When's he going to film this movie? He's got TV shows and he's got all this other stuff. So I thought that was good news in the face of all the Affleck stuff that's been
going on. And I'm not trying to play Debbie Downer, but there was a bit of, that was a bit of a PR type deal. It's more of a PR deal than anything else, but it's still, it was good. It did make, like you said, it made people feel good about something DC related,
Yeah. Well, that's the other side of it is it was, it's totally PR, because then they have the Green Lantern thing. So it was like in the face of all this, like, oh man, there's some bad news coming out. Like Mark talked about, like, I think a lot of that was strategic. They might have some other stuff in the pocket, like, hey, there's some stuff they can move forward on, but they're not ready to, and shifting might have happened. And so they could have said, hey, you know what? We can start putting Green Lantern out there. Like, Ryan, you're right. That was 2020 when that was.
That was like we're hedging our bets. This is the last thing that's going to come out. Oh, and they even said when they said Justice League was still going to be 2 movies, they were like, Green Lanterns will maybe be in Justice League 2. Maybe. Yeah.
So
but to see them have confidence in it now is good.
Well, Jeff Johns did say on that DC film, they had it on the CW,
the special last year.
Yeah, he did say Green Lantern's coming. It's going to be coming. I mean, they never said when.
He said the Green Lantern Corps will be part of the Justice League universe, basically, is what he said.
Yeah, and he said Hal, John, Guy, Kyle. I mean, he named every guy in the Corps. Anyways, like who knows? I'm not going to hold on to that as 100% truth. Like who's going to be in it? Yeah, excited. Here's the thing if Ben Affleck could listen to this show, I would just tell him this. I feel like Ben Affleck is a very beautiful girl and has promised me that in spring we're going to go on a date, right? But he keeps saying, you know what? I don't know. Maybe we're not going to go. And I'm like, dude, just commit to me. Commit to me. Stop telling me yes or no. And everyone else is ruining it for me. They're like, hey, Justin, I heard you and Ben are going to go on a date. And I'm like, yeah, man. And then, remember, Ben's a beautiful girl in this situation. and then everyone keeps asking him and he's getting frustrated. And now it's like, I don't know if we're going to go out. And I'm like, you guys are going to ruin it for me. So please, fans, calm down so that we can watch an awesome movie by Ben Affleck.
And
go
on a good date.
And go on a great date. Don't ruin things for me and Ben.
And Ron, you may explain this better than me. Can you tell the listeners, the fans, and I don't know how many of those, those crazy ones listen to this show, but just because we are criticized and sometimes can be pessimistic and so forth, doesn't mean we don't care about these characters and want this stuff to do well. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pump sunshine up people's rear ends, and that's what they want. A lot of the reaction was like, they dropped that picture and you posted that and that you bum me out, and they even went as far as to say I'm going to ruin the chances for this film to do well. I'm like, dude, I don't have that much freaking power, So
So that's the thing, and a lot of those people, like, it was really great that we had Mark on the show today because, like you said, Mark is very positive in his reporting, but he's also truthful, and BOF is very truthful too, and just tells it like it is. But all of the opinions and things we talked about on the show today shows that we're all not really that far off, at the end of the day. And we talked about it earlier too. Like, Batman on Film is it's here to tell it like it is. And like Justin says, it's your best friend that tells you when your pants are down. And I'm comparing this story. Okay. When you think about it, like this whole thing, I'm comparing it to things we got last year. Like when Bret Easton Ellis said the Batman script, or people working on Batman said that film's kind of a mess at the moment. What happened? Everybody freaked out. We did a podcast about it. We talked about it. It was a big thing then. And then right before BVS came out, there were those other reports, Warner Brothers is worried about BVS and all this stuff's going to happen and all that. And we all saw how that turned out too. Mm-hmm. But at the time beforehand, we had to do a big podcast about it. We talked about it. Like, everybody was upset. So this is like the same thing again, but with a year out from like a Justice League movie. So I understand why people are super on edge about it. And sometimes BOF has to be the bearer of bad news, or just like, hey, this is happening. But it is not unintended. We're not trying to like stir people up just to do it. Like, we care about the movies. We care about Batman.
And it's also trying to get the message out that we need to demand better.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the ultimate motive.
Exactly.
All right, guys. This is a long one. We're going to wrap it up. Justin, plug some stuff, dude, and we'll move on.
All right. So, we put a new episode of Let's Go podcast out, I believe, about 2 weeks out. So we have another one coming soon. If you could do me a huge favor, people, we're trying to do a few different things with our YouTube page. So if you go to my Twitter profile, you can click on a link to our YouTube page and like it. That would help that show out a lot. So we need to get up to 100 subscribers so we can get into a different platform building situation. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. Find me on Twitter at J_Rocca and hit me up. Thank you so much.
All right. Ryan?
Follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Leave us more iTunes reviews because I love reading those on the show. I plugged this on, I think I plugged this on our Rogue One show, but I forgot to talk about it on BOF Proper Show, so people have missed it. I'm going to mention it again. Christmas was a while ago, but we did a Christmas episode of the Robin Everyone Loves the Drake podcast, and it's really fun. We did we talked about Batman Noel was the big portion of the show, and it's got me and Rob and Terrence from the show, but we also have Andy DiGenova from Holy Batcast on, and it's just a big, long Christmas episode, and we even talk about Christmas memories, Batman Christmas memories, and there's a lot of really fun.
It was a fun show. It was a good show.
Yeah. I mean, there's some really good Batman Christmas memories in there, and there's some cool pictures on my Twitter feed. So if any of this news has got you depressed, you can go back to the Christmas times of Batman Christmases past. So you can check that show out if you go to the Batman Podcast Network website. You'll find Everyone Loves the Drake. So check that out too.
All right, very good. Alexa actually opened the show today, and I'm gonna
sweet.
Okay, and so I'm going to let announcer Rachel take us out though, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the podcast via iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film and on the BOF Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Jett.BatmanOnFilm. Email Jett via Jett@Batman-on-Film.com. Follow Rick on Twitter at ShoeRick and on Facebook at Facebook.com/BOFShoe. For Jett, Rick, the BOF Roundtablers, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thank you and good night.